Listen closely, because this sounds impossible at first. How did 300 ordinary men shatter an army of 135,000 hardened raiders in a single night without swinging a single sword against them? What if I told you that hidden inside this story is a blueprint for turning weakness into overwhelming force? A pattern of signals and signs that stretches from the threshing floors of ancient Israel to the psychology labs of today. And that if you stay with me, you'll discover the strange physics of dew on wool, the mathematics of fear, the acoustics of trumpets in the night, the mythic code of the number 300, and why a whisper at the right time can shake a kingdom more than a shout ever could. Because the next 10 seconds are your doorway into a mystery that has been waiting for you since the days when the hills of Jezreel caught fire with torches and shattered pottery, and the sky seemed to lean down to watch men tremble and then stand. Before we step into the valley, picture a man hiding underground, not in a cave but in a wine press, hollowed into the earth to crush grapes, except there are no grapes, only wheat, and the dust rises around him with every strike of the flail. He is threshing, not on the open threshing floor where wind should carry away the chaff, but down in a pit, because the raiders have turned open spaces into targets and daylight into danger. This is Gideon, a name that will soon be echoed in fear by men who once laughed at the thought of a farmer leading a people. He is not chosen for his strength. He is chosen while small. Remember that, because the next revelation uncovers a secret very few people know. In the language of the story, greatness doesn't arrive as a blinding beam. It slips in like a draft through a closed door and gathers around the most unlikely person, building courage grain by grain, like wheat rescued below ground. Now imagine the geography as a living map. To the north, the hill of Moreh; to the south, the ridges above the valley; to the east, the long road of raiders, Midian and Amalek, and the people of the east, with their tents like locusts and their camels beyond counting, a tide spilling into Israel's lowlands every harvest to swallow what others have planted. If you've ever been cornered by circumstances, if you've watched hard work vanish under someone else's boot, you already know the ache that trembles under this story's skin. Gideon's first encounter with the divine is not a trumpet blast or lightning bolt. It's a conversation under an oak tree, an angel sitting, not hovering, as if heaven is at home upon the earth. "The Lord is with you, mighty warrior," the messenger says to a man who does not feel mighty and has never been called a warrior. Here's the hinge between heaven and human. Identity is spoken before it is seen, but the next part will surprise you even more, because Gideon's reply is not worship but protest. If the Lord is with us, where are the wonders our ancestors told us about? This is not doubt for doubt's sake. It is ache fashioned into words. And the answer is not a lecture but a turning. Go in the strength you have. Am I not sending you? There is a physics to this call. The equation is simple. Small strength plus divine sending equals more than enough. Yet the human heart craves signs, and Gideon, still crouched, still tasting dust, asks for one. Fire rises from a rock to consume his offering, and he learns the first of the night's laws. What is placed on the stone in surrender becomes fuel for a flame that does not injure but instructs. The altar he raises is a broken name altar, because he calls it "The Lord is Peace" after being terrified. Notice the paradox. Peace is not the absence of fear, but the presence of the one who speaks after fear has said all it knows how to say. But now the story descends into a deeper chamber. Night falls over Ophrah, and Gideon, not yet lion-hearted, cuts down a sacred pole and topples an altar to a storm god worshipped by the region. He does it at night because he is afraid of his own town, and yet the act is done. Courage in this story doesn't arrive like a lightning strike. It accumulates through obedience in the dark. There is a rhythm to it. Hear, obey, tremble, survive, hear again. What comes next may change how you see the sky forever. The fleece. Gideon lays wool on the ground and asks for a sign that rides on the back of thermodynamics. Dew forms where surfaces radiate heat into the night and drop below the dew point. A fleece, dense and fibrous, cools faster and holds moisture more readily than the dry ground. Morning comes, wool soaked, earth dry. It is exactly what physics would predict and exactly what Gideon asked. But because courage is a muscle that shakes when first used, he asks again, reversing the test. Ground wet, fleece dry. Against expectation, against the physics that comforted him, the second sign arrives. The wool lifts, light, while the soil glistens around it. You could say nature bent for a moment, or you could say the real bending was Gideon's heart, which needed to know not only that God could echo creation's laws, but that he could sing above them. The test is not about fleece. It's about the gentle surgery of fear. And now we arrive at the mathematics of reduction. Gideon sends messengers to gather fighters, and 32,000 answer, still a fraction of the enemy's massed power. Yet the first divine instruction is to make the army smaller. Tell the fearful to go home. And 22,000 turn back, a heartbreaking tide of footsteps retreating from the ridge. 10,000 remain, and here the story opens one of its most debated scenes, a test at the water. Some kneel and drink with unguarded ease, others scoop water to their mouths, lapping like dogs, their heads up, their eyes scanning. Only 300 are chosen, not because they are elite commandos, but because they represent a paradox. The smallest sample size from which the largest victory will flow. Think of it as a psychological filter inside a theological frame. Men who can be taught to stand still while terror blooms around them. Men who will keep their hands free for strange weapons. A trumpet, a torch, a jar. Biblically, it's a foreshadow of the pattern to come. 12 disciples in a world empire, a mustard seed in a vast field. Scientifically, it is the power of signal over noise. When noise is overwhelming, a multitude of camels, torches spread like stars, the sharpest signal is not more of the same, but something different, singular, unexpected. So Gideon divides the 300 into 3 companies of 100 each, gives each man a shofar, ram's horn trumpet, a clay jar, and a torch hidden inside that jar. The strategy sounds like madness until you consider how the human brain passes threat at night. The limbic system spikes when sound and light arrive abruptly during the transition between watches, when the camp is most vulnerable. There are 3 watches in the ancient Near Eastern night. Gideon waits until the middle watch, roughly midnight, when sleep is deepest and guards are being changed. That short, chaotic overlap, when vigilance dips and confusion rises, he leads them down to the edge of the enemy camp, and the air is electric with the hiss of camels, the murmur of armies, the slow breathing of men dreaming of plunder at dawn. But the next part will surprise you even more. Gideon, still human, still fragile, hesitates. And the voice who called him does not scold, but invites, "If you are afraid, go down to the camp with your servant Purah and listen." He goes, 2 shadows among a nation of tents, and stops outside a canvas wall where 2 raiders whisper. One relates a dream, a barley loaf rolling into a Midianite tent and flattening it. The other interprets it with sudden dread. This can be nothing other than the sword of Gideon. God has given Midian into his hand. Even the enemy's subconscious collaborates when the hour turns. Note the symbol. Barley is poor man's bread. Gideon is a barley loaf, nothing fancy, but when gravity takes him downhill, tents fall. This is the story's poetry and its strategy. Dreams adjust the morale equation so that sound and light will complete the work. Gideon returns, worshipful now, and sets the formation in motion. Consider the physics. 300 torches tightly sealed inside jars consume oxygen, their flame small and starved, their light hidden. 3 rings of men creep along the heights surrounding the valley, so that when the jars break, Flames leap with sudden access to air, flaring brighter than they could if they had been exposed all along. The shofars, the ancient aerophones carved from horn, are designed to cut night like a blade. Their waveforms are jagged, rich in overtones that the human ear reads as urgent, unnatural. A single shofar can sound like a beast calling from a cusp between worlds. 300 in a ring sound like an army too vast to number, because here is the genius. In ancient warfare, one trumpet often led a company, not a single man. When 300 trumpets blare in unison, the brain assumes thousands upon thousands of soldiers. Then the jars smash, sudden percussive spikes echoing against the valley walls, and torches explode to life around the perimeter, each one seeming the banner of a different unit. Gideon's men shout a line that seems paradoxical, because they carry no swords in their hands at that moment. A sword for the Lord and for Gideon. But the sword is psychological first, then physical. The enemy wakes into terror, grabs weapons in the dark, and seeing flames and hearing blasts everywhere, turns against itself, slashing at shadows and allies alike. This is the neurobiology of panic. When stimuli are overwhelming and identification is low, the amygdala drives action before the prefrontal cortex can label friend or foe. Disorder amplifies itself. What comes next may change how you see the sky forever. Battle becomes a mirror. The Midianite blade finds Midianite flesh, not because of sorcery, but because of timing, sound, light, and morale. Israel's 300 stand still, as commanded, a wall of noise and fire. The fleeing mass cascades down the fords of the Jordan, pursued now by routed farmers turned hunters. The balance irrevocably shifted. But before we chase them, pause and listen to the deeper language humming below the tactics, because the next revelation uncovers a secret very few people know. The number 300 is not just arithmetic. It echoes across cultures like a bell. You may think of Spartan 300 at Thermopylae, centuries later and far away, a different theater entirely. But the human imagination ties symbols together. 300 is small enough to name and large enough to echo. It suggests a remnant, a precision, a hand-counted, face-known company, and it evokes the principle that transformation starts with a fraction. Symbolically, 3 is wholeness, beginning, middle, end, body, soul, spirit. Multiply to 100, fullness, and you have wholeness multiplied by fullness, a small, complete community that becomes catalytic. Strip away the numerology and you still have this. Intimacy of scale creates unity of action. Each man can see the eyes of the one to his left and right. Each man can trust the signal when it comes, and the signal comes in a form no one expects. Trumpets are not swords until they are. Jars are not bombs until they are. Torches are not spears until they are. Let's fold in the science of sound a little deeper. A shofar produces a range of frequencies with strong energy in the lower and mid registers. In a valley at night, those waves reflect from slopes and create a confusion of apparent sources. Without visual anchors, listeners perceive more sources than exist. A psychoacoustic phenomenon called the precedence effect, working in reverse, where reflections are misattributed as new origins. Now add the sharp, pottery-splitting crashes, impulse sounds with near-instant rise times. The brain reads them as nearby even when they are not. Then the torches, once hidden, leap to life. The rods and cones in the eye, adjusting to starlight, are suddenly hit by bursts that bleach the retina and create afterimages. For precious seconds, shapes smear, depth cues vanish. In that window, the shout, "A sword for the Lord and for Gideon," provides the only label in the chaos, and because it comes from every direction, it feels like the sole coherent narrative available. We are surrounded. But the next part will surprise you even more. Gideon's men are not superhuman. They are obeying a very human instruction. Hold your position, don't chase the first success. In modern terms, they avoid target fixation and keep the macro goal. Break the enemy's will. Panic does the rest. Now shift your gaze to the valley floor and see a man named Oreb, Raven, and another named Zeb, Wolf, captains of the raiders whose very names read like omens. They are hunted down at a rock and a wine press, notice the poetry, where a farmer once hid and where a raider now falls. The story loops upon itself, reversing roles. But let's not rush to the end. There is more in the middle, the vanity of Ephraim's pride, the harshness of Succoth and Penuel, who refuse bread to exhausted men in pursuit, the dark edge of Gideon's vengeance after victory when he returns to discipline those who mocked hunger in holy work. This is not a sanitized legend. It is human, raw, and throbbing with consequence. Inside it are questions we prefer to avoid. What happens to a leader as soul when he discovers he can command not only winds of fear, but rivers of loyalty? Why does a golden ephod, crafted from the spoils of triumph, become a snare? The story does not blink. It shows a man used mightily and yet capable of sowing seeds that later generations will reap in sorrow. And still, beyond the thread of human frailty, a pattern shines, strength distilled through reduction, faith clarified through testing, strategy that turns the enemy upon itself, and a victory whose engine is not brawn, but obedience, synchronized with perfect timing. Consider the threshing motif again. Gideon is introduced threshing wheat in secret. The barley bread dream rolls into a tent like a threshing sledge. The battle itself separates wheat from chaff in the human field, fear from courage, braggarts from brothers, pursuers from pretend allies. Threshing is the art of bringing hidden grain to air so wind can carry away what cannot feed you. Spiritually, that wind is discernment. Psychologically, it is focus. Strategically, it is the refusal to swing at everything that moves. And scientifically, you can almost see the debris cloud, the chaff of panic, blown across the valley as the 300 hold their line. What comes next may change how you see the sky forever. The fleece again, not as a child's Sunday image, but as a meditation on boundary conditions. Systems behave predictably within limits. Beyond them, anomalies appear. God permits Gideon a dialogue at the boundary, once within the expected behavior of dew and wool, once outside it, so that when the night of the battle arrives, the man leading 300 will not be paralyzed by the unknown. He has already asked, already listened, already learned that the world has a maker who can thread needles finer than fear. Now let's widen the lens to myth and memory. Across cultures, stories tell of the few holding against the many, of the sliver of light cutting a cavern of dark. Why does this pattern resonate? Because human life is usually lived as the minority report against the majorities of pressure. Time, hunger, doubt, the voice that says you are too small to matter. Gideon's 300 teach that smallest does not mean silent. Smallest can be the loudest when unity carries the sound. Here is a secret that folds the tactical into the timeless. Unity multiplies signal strength. In electronics, coherent sources produce constructive interference, waves adding to waves. In a valley at midnight, 300 coherent blasts create not a sum but a surge. In a people, 300 coherent lives become an engine the world cannot ignore. But the next part will surprise you even more, because the story whispers about leadership without the trappings of modern hero worship. Gideon is brave and reluctant, faithful and flawed. He tears down an idol at night because he's afraid, and yet praise still rises from that act. He asks for signs and receives them. Then, when offered kingship by a grateful people after the rout, he says, "I will not rule over you. The Lord will rule over you." And yet he builds an ephod whose magnetism pulls hearts aside. This is a warning encoded within the wonder. What you fashion from victory may become a weight if you forget the wind that lifted you. Even so, the central lesson remains unshaken. God specializes in leveraging scarcity. 32,000 is thinned to 10,000, 10,000 to 300, 300 to stillness, stillness to signal, signal to stampede, stampede to pursuit, and pursuit to rest. Each step is a smaller circle within a larger one, spiraling inward to the core principle. Obedience is the amplifier. Apply it, and you'll see it everywhere. Teams that cut features to focus and suddenly find force. Students who prune distractions and discover deep learning. Families that agree on a single nightly ritual and watch chaos retreat. Creators who decide on one message, one design language, one posting time, and punch through the noise. A jar, a torch, a trumpet. Simplicity in triads. And if you were wondering where you fit, if you are one of the 300 or one of the 32,000 who went home, remember the first moment under the oak. Identity is spoken before it is seen. You don't need the battlefield to begin. You can start in a winepress of your own, some hidden place where you re-preserving a little grain from a season of loss, and hear a name that stretches you into courage. And when you ask for signs, do not despise the ordinary ones. The dew that forms where it should reminds you that the world is ordered. The dew that doesn't, once in a long while, reminds you that order serves a Lord who is not its prisoner. Keep following the thread into the micro details that make this night victory inevitable. Imagine the camp clocks, if they had them, rolling past midnight. Circadian rhythms dip, core temperature drops slightly, vigilance is lowest. The changing of the guard introduces noise, footsteps, whispers, armor clink. Into that seam, Gideon pours signal, sharp, unified, multiplied. The men's positioning on the heights matters. Sound travels downhill, light appears larger from below. Silhouettes on ridgelines look like masses. Even the clay of the jars carries a lesson. Clay, fragile and cheap, becomes the sheath for flame. Clay breaks, and that breaking turns the hidden light into a beacon. You can hear an echo, can't you? Treasure in jars of clay, so that surpassing power is clearly not from us. The symbolism hums in the background like a second score under the main theme. And yet nothing here dissolves into metaphor. The blades were real, the fear was real. The pursuit across the Jordan was sweat and thirst and muscle. Faith is not less real, it is more. It is the invisible architecture supporting a visible night. Now attend to a single voice in the 300, because the story lets us hear the chorus but invites us to imagine a solo. A man named Levi, or Shammah, or Heled, choose any old Israelite name, stands with a jar in one hand and a horn in the other and thinks, I am a farmer, I am a father. I'm about to shout into a sea of enemies with no sword in my hand. The order comes, the jar shatters, the torch blooms white, the horn explodes into the dark, and his shout joins the shout of the others. In that instant, he is not a farmer, not a father. He is a node in a network, a pixel in a picture, a part of a wave whose crest is breaking across tents like surf. Fear doesn't vanish. It has somewhere better to go. It pours into the enemy. This is the transferable principle. You do not eradicate fear. You relocate it. You decide who will carry it, the ones aligned with truth or the ones aligned against it. And when fear crosses the line, it mutates into wisdom on your side and confusion on theirs. But the next part will surprise you even more, because embedded in Gideon's night is a precise and humbling requirement: hold your ground. Many of us break formation the moment the first jar breaks. We sprint after results, grab at credit, post in all caps. The 300 teach us to stand and keep blowing. The valley needs sustained signal more than it needs scattered pursuit. Only when panic becomes rout do they move. And then they move in unity, calling the surrounding tribes to cut off the fords, converting a localized terror into a regional shift. And still, after the heads of Oreb and Zeb fall, after Zebah and Zalmunna are captured, after the last 15,000 are scattered beyond recovery, the story refuses to tidy up. Gideon refuses kingship, but creates an ephod. The land knows peace for 40 years, then slides again when memory thins and men love symbols more than the presence that charged them. This too is a gift, a warning against turning tonight's miracle into tomorrow's monument. The lesson is alive only while obeyed. So what do we carry from the valley? Carry this: God asked for less and gave more. He turned 32,000 into 10,000, into 300, into silence, into signal, into victory. He turned a winepress into a pulpit, a barley loaf into a prophecy, a jar into an amplifier, a torch into a panic starter, a horn into an earthquake. He turned a man who asked for signs into a man others asked to rule. He turned a nation's harvest theft into a feast of spoils. And he did it in a way that left no one confused about the source. If you listen, you can still hear those horns, not as nostalgia, but as instruction. Strip down your strategy, clarify your signal, choose your watch, the seam between vigilance and sleep, and plant your feet on a ridge with two friends at your side. Hide your light until the moment it matters. Then break what must be broken so the flame can breathe. Shout the right name, keep standing, watch the valley answer. And the next revelation uncovers a secret very few people know. This story does not end where we think it ends. Because there are other valleys, other nights, other jars we have not yet dared to carry, other watches we have not yet learned to keep, other fleeces we have not yet dared to lay. And even now, if you listen past the hush of your own room, there is the hush before the shofar, the breath in the chest of someone ordinary who is about to become part of a sound that will make the dark panic and run. And what comes next may change how you see the sky forever. Before we part, breathe this in. We have walked from a hidden wine press to a blazing hillside, from a trembling farmer to a midnight general, from 32,000 hands to just 300 steady hearts, from a damp fleece that followed the laws of dew to a dry fleece that bent them, from a poor man's barley loaf rolling through a dream to tents collapsing in real time, from silent jars to shofars exploding like thunder, from stillness to signal to stampede. We watched how God thins an army to thicken its faith, how he hides light so it can burst at the appointed watch, how he turns fragile clay into the sheath for holy fire, how he relocates fear from the faithful to the foe, how he humbles pride and amplifies obedience, and how he writes strategy into symbols, torch, trumpet, jar, so that even a child could remember and a nation could live by it. We faced the human warnings too. Victory can birth idols if we forge monuments to moments instead of returning our hearts to the presence that made the moment possible. And yet, through it all, one unbreakable thread held. God specializes in using less to do more, the weak to shame the strong, the overlooked to overturn the overwhelming. If this message resonated with you, if you felt something stir in your spirit tonight, I'm inviting you to move from simply watching to actively witnessing. Share in the comments. What secret battle are you fighting, and what truth is God speaking over you? Post a short prayer for courage through the darkness, for the strength to stand firm until his light breaks through. Testify to what God has already done in your life. Your story could be the spark someone else desperately needs to see. And I ask you to do one more brave thing. Share this message with at least 10 people, 10 friends, 10 family members, 10 souls who need to know that God turns our fear into formation. Every share is like a trumpet call, every testimony a torch lighting up the dark. Let's be a signal of hope. Write, pray, testify, and share. Let's light up the internet with a witness that refuses to go dim. Thank you for watching.